Okay, well, hello everyone. I'm not sure if we got everyone from the last session that was here, but I'm your moderator, Rozalyn Malott. I am with the Found House Interfaith Housing Network, specifically the Pet Support Program. Um, if you're in this session, we're going to be talking about the advice line for co-housing and permanent supportive housing. As I said, I am Rozalyn. I have a background in dog training as well as a bachelor's in social work. If Garrett can't answer all your questions, I might be able to help out along the way. Today, you will have the opportunity to participate in our small group discussion tailored to gain some more real time advice about co sheltering in permanent supportive housing. Our speaker today is Garrett Parsons, whom has been the Found House Pet Support Director for the Interfaith Housing Network in Cincinnati, Ohio for the past 9 years. He has grown and run the Pet Support Program, which offers temporary shelter to animals and owners facing housing insecurity. Under Garrett's leadership, the Pet Support Program has become a vital resource for families and their pets in the greater Cincinnati area and helps families ensure that they're not overlooked and stay intact. Throughout this, please put any of your questions in the Whova questions and answer chat, not the chat box, and I'll be able to relay those to Garrett so that we can get some questions rolling through. Um, First question that we have here, Garrett. Um, Due to the fact that I am a client and advocate for animals and the homeless, how can I get even more involved in helping without violating anyone's rights?
Well, we take volunteers here at Found House. So if you're in Cincinnati, I'd love if you would connect with us. And if you are already connected with us, connect with us even more. Start volunteering with us and see how we can, utilize your strengths and how you want to support us or support the mission in general. That would be my advice.
Next. Well, I don't have any more questions in the chat. Feel free to pop some in there if you guys can.
I know there's a lot of people here. Thank you for attending. I hope that you're enjoying the conference so far. Yeah, I'm happy to really talk about kind of any facet of our program and how it might be able to support yours or your existing program or a newer program, whatever it may be. I'm trying to think also, we had 5 minutes to go through what our programs do. There was a lot of information that we did not cover. And Roz, please just like stop me if a question comes through. Yeah, so if I think through kind of what we missed, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, what our program is trying to do is ensure that families get to stay together. I think that last slide that I had talked about particularly like how we spend most of our days, what I find myself most passionate about. Over the years, we've gotten our call volumes have increased. We've received more and more calls every year. So what I didn't do was talk more specifically about numbers. So let's say here, 2024. We sheltered, fostered, boarded, all in total about 175 animals for people that were trying to secure housing, with a small portion of them being folks that were in treatment or being hospitalized. But we said no to over 1,000 animals, all belonging to owners that were in some sort of crisis. Those weren't 1,000 animals, or sorry, 1,000 owners that they wanted to surrender their animal. Those were 1,000 animals with owners that wanted to keep their pet, generally were low income and wanted to keep that family together that we had to say no to. So we spent a lot of time on the phone trying to just problem solve, use a lot of out of the box thinking to determine maybe how our program might be able to point that person in the direction where they don't lose their family.
So we've got questions flying in.
Okay, great. Yay.
Um, Here's a good one. What would be a good first step or steps to start implementing a program similar to ours?
So if you're working in a homeless shelter, I guess that might be the assumption. I think a really good first step is to get an idea of what other, your colleagues, your coworkers, where is everybody at in the process of, like, if you were to ask them, hey, what would it be like to have animals here? Do you think that would be beneficial to clients? Do you think that we could make that work? And just gauge where everybody is at. Because once you do that, you're going to know what your hurdles are. Like, is it your boss, that person that says no all the time? Or is it, maybe you do have a lot of people that are yes on board and you're just not sure where to start. And if that's the case, then I would find an animal welfare partner. I think that's really integral to ensuring that if you have animals on site, you're doing it safely.
We've got what is an average stay for a dog at the kennels? They said I was amazed at the return to owner percentage.
Average length of stay, that was the question. So last year it was 99 days. And I attribute that, that's the average. I think that most animals, though, that come in are here between 3 and 6 months. We have a lot of owners that are not linked up with services, and therefore it takes a longer usually for them to find housing. But then we also have folks that are in short-term treatment programs or hospitalized for a short amount of time, or we got their animal kind of later in the process of them finding housing. So that's the average that we had, but we'll bring in an animal and we don't know if we're going to have them for 3 days or 6 months. It's just kind of all over the place. It really matters, if they're linked up with services.
What is your current kennel capacity and how do you manage capacity to ensure you are still able to assist new emergency requests?
Yeah, I mean, that's tricky. We're constantly trying to evaluate how we can best serve and kind of prioritize the most needs or the biggest needs. We have a capacity for about 30 animals on site with an additional, on average, 20 animals in foster, so about 50 at any given time, which is much higher than it used to be years ago when we had a capacity for, say, like 10 to 15 or even less back in 2015, 2016. We are just really good, and Roz is really good at this too. Part of the reason why I hired her, we're really good at problem solving. There's a lot of ways to appropriately shelter an animal to make sure that their needs are met. So, you got crates, you got space, you got the volunteers or the staff to care for the animals, you have the ability to feed them. And if you have all those things to work with, you can kind of make some magic happen in a short amount of time.
Do we have any requirements on vaccination, spay or neuter for the animals that are going to be in our shelter?
So the majority of animals that come into our program have a vaccine history but aren't up to date. And in order for us to be safe, we do get that animal vaccinated. So that is a requirement, but it's not something that the owner pays for. And it's generally something that we can get secured within a few days to a week with our awesome veterinary partners. We don't have a vet on site, obviously, so we do a lot of animal transportation. If the owner is able to take the animal to the vet, that's great. We want them to be involved in that process whenever possible, to just empower them. But if they can't, it's one thing less they have to worry about. We'll do that transportation, get those vaccines. We do not require spay neuter, and I love that we don't require spay neuter because it would be a barrier. It would be a barrier to people accessing our shelter if we required it. I think a lot of people would say no. When we have them fill out the spay neuter consent, we do have people that say no, and then we ask, why is that? And then maybe it's just they maybe have this notion that spaying or neutering does this, and we could just give them information. That's what we do. And then ultimately they might decide to spay neuter, in which case we make that happen. And then I always tell them, hey, 6 months down the road, a year later, if you change your mind and want your animal fixed, just call us. We'll make it happen. Just because you weren't ready to say yes, when you were working with us, and we didn't necessarily want you to. We wanted you to just tell us what you wanted. We'll make that happen.
So we've got about 5 minutes left. Just want to keep you in the realm of things. What resources do we have to assist our current clients with vet care?
With vet care, That is honestly one of the biggest needs. We're really lucky in Cincinnati to have a local spay neuter clinic that also has a vaccine clinic that subsidizes a lot of resources, or a lot of services. So we end up not paying for a lot of spay neuters or vaccinations, but we do have to pay for some at a very discounted rate. We have a veterinary partner for more intensive needs that offer a small 15% discount, which, isn't much. It adds up. We've had to fundraise for certain medical needs from time to time. It's when there's an overnight emergency or the animal has to be there at the vet overnight. That's when it gets really difficult. We're lucky to have an end of life care organization for animals in Cincinnati. So a lot of animals, even if they aren't in our care, and we're speaking with owners on the phone whose animal needs to be euthanized, we can make sure that that's subsidized through their program. It's called Angel's Paws here in Cincinnati. We've had to rely on something called, and some of you attending might be familiar with it, Pets of the Homeless. I believe they have medical care grants. So I'll refer a lot of people that don't have housing, that have a medical need for their animal, to call that hotline, talk to their case managers, and get it paid for. But it ends up at the end of the day being one of the most expensive parts of our program.
We've got, I think, try to get in two more. So how often can owners visit, and what is the feedback from owners when they get to visit?
So we tell owners that they get to visit once a week, but I also kind of treat that case by case. If there's an owner that's clearly struggling to be away from their animal, I don't want to deprive that. We're only two people. We only have so much time. We have to facilitate the visit to an extent to make sure that it's a matter of being able to access other animals and our volunteers if they're in the building. So it's kind of it's like a dance in that way. We'll bring animals to people to visit sometimes too if transportation is a barrier. So I think what we do is assess what is the need. And some owners don't want to visit because they feel like they're abandoning their animal all over again, and that's something that over time I think diminishes. But it is very much case by case. We try and replace the fact that they're not with their owner 24/7. And we can't possibly get even close, but we can try. So feedback has been pretty good. I'd like to think that owners really think that we're pretty flexible. We work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, so sometimes they get upset that they can't visit on the weekend. That might be the biggest complaint.
And then I think this one is a good one to round out on, just so that they can get a glimpse of kind of what we kind of do on a day to day. But what is the hardest situation you have dealt with?
I mean, the hardest situation was when I saw like a true form of neglect and an animal passed and another animal almost did. But I'll say in 10 years, I've seen that like one time. So that was difficult. That was difficult to handle because I'm not used to handling it. The majority of the owners that we work with are absolutely amazing and provide incredibly good care for their animals. I think though my biggest ongoing headaches, and I said this in the presentation of the panel, my biggest headaches are when I'm working with a case manager or a social worker. They might not like animals themselves, which is fine. Not everybody has to like an animal. But when they can't really get on board with the fact that if their client says that this animal is part of their family, then as a case manager, as a social worker, whatever they identify as, that animal is a strength to that family. That should be encouraged, that should be supported, that shouldn't be judged. Yes, having an animal makes things harder for the provider because it can make housing harder. It can make just like daily life in a shelter a little bit more difficult, but it's absolutely worth it, and it's just the right thing to do.
So closing question here. Why do you think pet inclusive solutions to homelessness are urgent among all the other urgent social issues that people are working to solve?
It's really easy to think that it's urgent because I've seen how important pets are to people. I mean, if you yourself ask yourself, what would you do if you didn't have housing and you had these animals that you needed and you didn't know what to do with them? I mean, that's absolutely world crushing. So yes, there are a lot of things going on right now. There's a lot of urgency to a lot of issues, but what it comes down to is I mean, I think that the work that we're doing supporting families, it lends to healthier neighborhoods, it lends to healthier communities. I think and I said this in the panel, like less trauma allows people to be more successful, to be happier, to be healthier, to all kinds of things, right? So, I mean, on an individual level, that can make a really big impact, especially when a lot of individuals share that common thing.
Well, we are right at 3:15. Thank you, Garrett, for your time, and thank
Yeah.
you all for participating and giving us a bunch of lovely questions to answer. I'm sure you guys got some of Garrett's contact info, so feel free to email any extra questions that you guys may have. But enjoy the rest of the conference, guys.
One thing real quick. I can see a couple faces. Thumbs up. Is our contact information accessible? Okay, good. Because I don't know. Yeah, please reach out if you have any questions. I'd be happy to chat. I know I've already scheduled one chat for Monday. And Ross, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bye, guys.